one of the first people I thought of when all this was going down and I was reading this story, because this is his wheelhouse. I mean, yes, writing books and all that stuff is also in his wheelhouse. But my longtime friend, Brad Thor, who is a New York Times #1 best-selling author, he is a master of the genre. In fact, I think he's called literally king of the thrillers. I don't know if they give you like a belt buckle for that. In Texas, that's what they would do. Something, like very, I would wear it if I was him. But we're going to talk about his new book that he has out. And I'm really excited about that. And also, I want to ask him, too, about some of the rumors I've been reading about the movie series and all this stuff. I feel like he's not going to answer me on that, but we're going to try anyway. But Brad Thor, without further ado, good to see you, my friend. It's been way too long.
It's been way too long, Dana. It's great to see you.
Of course. I by the way, I have to say, I am very envious of your man cave.
I've got the bar back there.
I'm telling you.
Books all around. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's super nice. We'll have to do some like girl talk about decorating tips. Anyway, first off, I definitely want to get to your book, but I've got to ask you, because, if people don't know about your background, you have a background in law enforcement. You were with the Department of Homeland Security. You've advised law enforcement organizations, et cetera. One of the things that I think is like one of the biggest threats to law-abiding citizens is this rot of restorative justice, where you have these repeat offenders and the recidivism rate. I'm assuming that you've seen the Jose Alba case, the bodega owner in Hamilton Heights. Yep. What kind of message is this sending to criminals? To law-abiding, we see that, okay, well, we're obviously prioritizing criminal welfare over the innocent. But what message is this sending to these repeat offenders?
That anything goes and that there's no penalties. So there's no cash bail nonsense that they have in New York is ridiculous. Even the Democratic governor of New York is against what the DA is doing there in New York City. So it's a big problem. And I watched the video. First of all, it's amazing that this guy had the wherewithal to come up over his attacker's arm to be able to stab him in the neck. The guy feared for his life. And that's the only, and that as someone who's a concealed carry weapons holder, that it's concern for your over great bodily harm or your life. And so this is somebody who had every right to defend himself. They lock him up. And the guy they should be locking up and never should have gotten out was the offender who went after him. And they took his GoFundMe page down to help raise bail and all this kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's the wrong message. And, I always come back on this stuff, Dana, to Willie Sutton, the bank robber. And when he was asked by the FBI, why do you rob banks? And he said, that's where the money is. So these people are preying on the innocent because they know, particularly in a place like New York, they're not going to be armed, at least not with a handgun. And it's going to be very difficult for them to fight back.
Yeah, very difficult for them to fight back. Even after the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, even after that case, it's still kind of slow going. Hopefully. It's a tale of the guy who he does it right. He immigrates to the country legally 30 years ago, becomes a citizen 14 years ago, adding to the value of the community with his bodega. And I compare that to the two illegal entrants in Virginia who came in, planning an Independence Day massacre in illegal possession of firearms. They get $15,000 bail. Alvin Bragg wanted $500,000 bail for this guy. It's like a bait and switch with Democrats concerning immigration.
It's ridiculous. And this man posed no threat to the community. This guy was a pillar of his community. So to ask for bail that high, that somehow he was a flight risk, it was ridiculous. And it makes a mockery of the justice system. This guy's got to go the same way the ultra woke San Francisco DA got chucked out.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll happen.
It's been a weird news day, as you can imagine, with all the stuff with the Japanese prime minister, and because you work with Department of Homeland Security, you know all of this stuff. You see threats, and you also understand, foreign and domestic threats too. I wanted to get your take on this assassination of Shinzo Abe. The thing that blows my mind, and we're talking to our good friend, New York Times #1 bestselling author Brad Thor. He's got a new book out, Rising Tiger, which we're going to talk about. But the thing that really gets me, a former prime minister, no security behind him, and this guy who apparently said he didn't hold a political grudge, he just didn't like Shinzo Abe, comes running up with a homemade like a zipper gun with two pipes and a real primitive looking chunk of wood. I guess they've been really lulled into a sense of security because of gun control.
Yeah, so last year in Japan, they had 10 homicides via firearm, and 8 of those involved the Yakuza. So it's a really small amount of firearm attacks, but there's knives and things like that. So whatever security he had, it's difficult because you want a photo op, right? You don't want it to look like you're afraid and you've got the security close by. And this is what happens. And this is being called a gun. And I've seen pictures. It looks like 2 pipe bombs that were duct taped onto a piece of wood with something you could hold. So I'm not against you, but just in general with the media, I'm pushing back on this narrative that somehow this was a homemade gun. It's an improvised explosive device is what it is.
That's a great
that's the
point.
way we should be referring to it. Yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah, somebody at CBS and I think even ABC were saying it was a 3D printed gun. That's not a 3D printed gun.
No, it's not. It was a real hillbilly piece of something, but it was definitely no 3D. I mean, it had the Alabama chrome, the duct tape on it and stuff. Yeah, this was
Alabama chrome. That's a band name.
I don't want to make light of the assassination because I was texting with the former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien this morning over this from the Trump administration. And Robert had gotten to know Shinzo Abe with all of his visits to Mar-a-Lago and to the White House and things like this, and said he was an absolutely great man, a great human being. This is a massive loss for the people of Japan. And it's just, you don't want to see someone murdered like that. I don't care what your grudge is against the guy. Obviously, the person who took him out is very, very sick. And listen, if anything, this disproves the craziness that we get here with gun laws, because here's somebody who couldn't get it. They had some of the tightest gun control in the world. This guy just made a weapon. Just like the worst school attack ever in the history of our country is the Bath School massacre that was done in Michigan, and that was done with explosives. So these nuts, unfortunately, will find a way. Encroaching on the rights of law-abiding gun owners is not the way to stop this stuff from happening. I wish there was more mental health things we could do, but sometimes stuff happens. That's unfortunately, I'm not saying it's okay, but sometimes people who need mental health fall through the cracks. I wish there was a better thing we could do to help them before they hurt themselves or other people. Yeah,
I wish so too. One last quick question on this. Talking with Brad Thor, and his new book, Rising Tiger, is out. And then, of course, I've been reading all this stuff about Lions of Lucerne, and maybe I've heard a little rumor that maybe you would like Scott Eastwood to play. We're going to talk about that. But as it relates to this, I mean, I think one of the reasons why this is shocked. Well, I mean, he was Shinzo Abe was a giant in Japanese politics, but an ally to the U.S., regardless of who was president. I mean, was really it got Japan out of the stagflation, was really helping to beef up their economy with Abenomics and all of this, but also really encouraging their government to rise to meet China's rising influence. Does this put a hurdle in that, or does he have enough proteges? Has he made enough of a mark to hedge against that in his death?
It's going to depend on how, over the next several days and weeks, how the Japanese public reacts to this and what they see here. If there's going to be support for his party or there's not going to be support. Japan is a very important player in what we call the Quad, which is the United States, Australia, Japan, and India. In fact, I play upon that in Rising Tiger, the need to kind of counter China with almost an Asian version of NATO, if you will, because of the expansionism of China. And so, it's a real blow for that country. And it's just it's doubly shocking because you don't see this kind of thing happen in Japan.
Yeah, you definitely don't. And I would hope, because I know their parliamentary elections are getting ready, are getting ready to happen. It seems like everything is still a go, but we'll see what happens. We'll see if that influence can still last. Okay, so your new book, Rising Tiger, you just mentioned that you played a lot on that whole the Quad, and the associations that those countries have, which of course was also kind of attributed to Abe as well. But I want to go to your first book though, Lions of Lucerne, because is that being made into a movie? Everything says in development, and nothing's been announced. What is going on?
So we are at a studio. I got my pick of directors. I picked the biggest and best action director in Hollywood. Got him. And so we are finalizing our writer, and that's where we are. So it's on track. It's a train that's been placed on train tracks, and they're starting to shovel the coal into the boiler. So we're going sure and steady.
Now, my next question is whether or not your title character, Scott Harvath, is he going to be played by a similarly named actor? I know that's your wish.
So I talked many years ago to Scott Eastwood about it. Lovely guy. We had just a quick phone call. Somebody introduced the two of us. I think he's a terrific actor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great actors in Hollywood. And so the studio has asked me not to play any favorites because they have their preferences. And what they want to do is they want to get kind of a short list and come to me and say, well, who do you really think would be able to take the role on and stuff? And there have been a couple other names floated too. So we'll see. I hate to play coy about it, but I've been asked to be coy.
Oh, I've seen The Offer. I know how this goes now. I mean, Godfather is one of my favorite film series of all time. Oh my God.
Awesome.
Have you been watching The Offer?
So
now I feel like I know how the movies are made. So I know exactly. You're Mario Puzo, except, you didn't have any difficulty in getting your writing done. But you're like Puzo, and you want who you want, but then you got, your producers that you got to wrangle with.
Robert Evans.
Exactly. Al Ruddy and all of that.
Al Ruddy. Yep.
I would love to see Scott Eastman in that role. And you're right. He's a great actor. And I cannot see Scott Harvath is anybody but him, though. After you said that, I can't see. It's just perfect. It's so perfect.
He would be perfect.
So I would love to. I will go see this in the theater a million times if he plays him, because I love Scott Eastwood. He's been great in everything he does. So look, maybe that helps sway. Probably not at all. But I'm offering. Okay, so but Rising Tiger. Tell me about this. That's the latest in your series. This is like your 21st book in this series. And I love the play, which you normally do, but this is so incredibly timely. And now with everything blowing up, sadly, tell us about this.
So it's my 21st thriller. If you haven't read a Brad Thor thriller before, it's like seeing a James Bond movie. You can go and pick up the latest book. You don't need to have seen a Bond movie before. Same thing with my books. It's a thriller based on something China did 2 summers ago. They sent a team of Chinese soldiers over the Himalayas into India to ambush a group of Indian soldiers, but they did it with homemade weapons.
And they fought like in the mountains.
6 hours in the Himalayas, throwing each other off cliffs and all this kind of stuff. It was amazing. And I said, I'm going to open up my thriller with that. And what it's going to be going forward is the United States trying to officially pull Japan, Australia, and India into an Asian version of NATO. We send a diplomat to India who gets murdered. Scott Harvath gets sent in to figure out what happens. And it's this really cool romp through a place. None of my contemporaries have done a spy thriller in India. And it was I learned so much, Dana, and it was a blast to write.
That's brilliant. I'm hooked already. I cannot wait to read it. You're really good at that, though. You always have like some pretty crazy, like pretty awesome openers that really get your attention. I cannot wait to see that, though, on film now, since we're beginning the Brad Thor series with Scott Harvath. I can't wait to hear about that. So keep me updated. Like if you get, I promise, Cone of Silence, if you get your guy, let me know so I can go ahead and plan a whole week to go and see it repeatedly in the theater. Brad Thor, bradthor.com, latest book, Rising Tiger, #1 New York Times bestseller. Congratulations on all your success, my friend. It's so good to see you. And don't be a stranger. We got to have you back.
I'd love to. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks so much. Take care.